I have so much respect for builders. When you're in it and you see what they go through on a daily basis, you appreciate much more like all the kind of dedication that they're putting into this project.
Like that's what we saw in Rushi and Cooper, were these two guys that were going to stop at nothing to make this vision of a modular move blockchain a reality. The token launched in December was a massive success.
Rushi was very intentional. Like, guys, like, I don't want to see this because it's a distraction, right?
Yeah.
Our job is like, we want to launch the best secure chain possible that's out there. And if we're like too honed in on just like the price, then there's just going to be a lot of issues.
Welcome to the Interop. I'm here with Ali Sheikh, who's head of BD at Movement. Movement just had their TGE a couple weeks ago, and this is going to be the first podcast we do with them after TGE. We're going to be diving into what it took to get us to this point, to launch a token and that really successful token launch that we all saw, and also discussing the ecosystem and what's next, what's on the roadmap for Movement, what we can expect in the next coming weeks and months, because this is just getting started, guys. Ali, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to be chatting with you today.
So before the show, we were talking about your background. You said that you were working at a VC before joining Movement. That's usually like the inverse trajectory. People will like work for a team and then go work for a VC. What's that trajectory been like for you? What's it been like going back into the builder seat and working for a startup?
Yeah, no. So before Movement, I was actually at Reciprocal Ventures, focusing a lot on investments. And I think it was phenomenal for me. It was my first job in crypto. Really helped me understood like the environment, the ecosystem, kind of what goes on there. A lot of my job was actually, looking out for companies that were like super impressive. And so, I think that was like really great, a great experience. But then one of the things that I felt like I was always missing is like, what goes on within a crypto company, right? Whereas, when you work at a VC, like you're looking for deals, once the deal is done, you find the next deal and kind of like you're moving on. When you're working at one company, like when I was at Movement, right, it's 100% just like focusing on things like that are movement related. So you go super deep, and super kind of down the rabbit hole. And I think that was, it's just been an invaluable experience to really understand like the nuts and bolts of like what goes on in terms of building like a successful crypto company. I think for me, when I think about it is like, I do think like some of the best investors, come from startup backgrounds. And I think, you build on your experience. At Movement, actually, I also help a lot of our ecosystem projects with fundraising. So whether that's introductions to VCs, whether it's helping them with their pitch, whether it's helping them with their go-to-market strategies, whether it's helping them with their narratives, I think that's been also super valuable for our team, because a lot of the teams that we work with, this is their first company. This is their first time kind of coming into crypto. And a lot of times they just don't know like what it means to like, be prepared for like an investor meeting. And so just walking them through that and like really giving them some guidance, doing some prep with them, doing practice sessions has come in like really handy. And, we've had quite a few teams fundraise in our ecosystem, which has been really amazing to see. And we hope to see even more. And so that's like a core part of, our philosophy is that Movement can only be successful if our ecosystem projects are successful. And so we really, double down on helping ecosystem projects fundraise in our ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if the ecosystem projects are successful, then that's a big step into ensuring the success of the layer one. And um, so, what's been the most surprising thing, going back into the builder seat, coming from VC? Like what has surprised you the most about how the inner workings of a crypto company function?
Yeah, to be honest, it's funny, but it's just like the amount of work. I like prior to crypto, I was in Web 2 and I did a bunch of things. I actually started my career in investment banking, right? Um, but like I think working at a startup, it's 24/7, right? Not that we don't have days off, but in the end of the day, like you are an owner, you are an operator, right? And so a lot of things you just need to always be aware of, right? There's always something that can go wrong. And so it's a good thing. I think one of the things is, we have been successful, which has been great. And so there's like a really big responsibility on us to like make sure that we are addressing any of concerns that are coming up. If there's any questions that we have to be like thoughtful how we approach it and answer them. Um, and we have to be honest to our community, right? And so, it's not just like, oh, like I can, take off for like a week and like everything will be fine. It's like, you're kind of always checking in to make sure that everything is going well. And so I think that's, something that I've learned is like, I have so much respect for builders, so much more respect for builders, right? Even in VC, like obviously, we had a lot of respect for builders, but when you're in it and you see what they go through on a daily basis, there's this like bond that you have with like other people who are building, and you appreciate much more like all the hard work, all the sacrifices that they're making, all the kind of dedication that they're putting into this project. And so I think that's really been great to see, right? Like I said, in when you're investing, you definitely have that appreciation for builders, but like when you're in it and you see what they go through on a daily basis, it's just like a different world and a different kind of experience that you have.
Yeah, and I think as an investor, a lot of the work that goes into DD, I mean, obviously there's product and the vision for the product, but it's finding the people that are going to do that, that are going to be all in, and that are going to, uh, work themselves tirelessly until this thing works, until their vision comes to fruition. And when we met the movement team early on at Interop Ventures, that's what we saw. Like that's what we saw in Rushi and Cooper, were these two guys that were going to stop at nothing to make this vision of a modular move blockchain a reality. And well, I mean, this is just the starting. This is just the starting blocks, right? We're just getting started. It feels like it's been such a long journey, but definitely there are strong indications that we made a good bet in that team, and they've surrounded themselves with other people that also have that drive and that want to carry that vision. So it's really great to see. I think like as an investor, one of the things that I wrote about this in my like year-end email out to like our investors. Like one of the things that I've found is the most rewarding is seeing founders really thrive and kind of watching founders grow, especially young founders, founders that are like in their early 20s or it's their first company, and you kind of see them the first day and like they're kind of scrappy, and then but they just grow into these really mature sort of people running a business, and that's very very rewarding. Now that you're ahead of BD and that there's a team, one other thing that I think is great is that you're here on the podcast. Rushi has been on a tear, just speaking on every podcast, every single event. And I think that also having more people from the team, so be forward facing and outward facing, is also a sign of like maturity, and that the team's doing well, and that there's like good people there that are able to take on those roles. How's that transition also going? Like from having Rushi basically be on everything to like now having multiple people out and speaking on the behalf of the company.
Yeah, it's really interesting because actually, since day one, Rushi's always encouraged all of us to, hey, like, can you guys do this talk? Can you actually speak on this? And I have done a few talks as well, like at Token 2049 and things like that. He's always wanted it, and so it's not something new that he's like asked us for, but I do think we have a little bit more breathing room because we did launch our token. And I think before, like, especially for me, like I was just so heads down on like, okay, look, I just need to, work with our partners, get launches, get our deals done, do as much BD as possible. And so it was hard to find time to like, spend like some time like preparing for podcast, doing interviews and things like that. And so, obviously Rushi front and center was able to do that on our behalf. But, I think one of the cool things about Rushi, and I will say Coop as well, is that they're just very down to earth, and they're not of the opinion like, oh, like since I'm the founder, I need to be on this panel and I need to speak at this event and things like that. They've always very much been like, hey, you want to do it? Like you go for it. They're like, very kind of hands off, very much like we want to see everyone at the team succeed. And a lot of times, like We even have people like on our DevRel team or like even our Asia team. They're like, hey, I'm gonna throw this event and I'm gonna do this panel. Like, yeah, go for it, right? It's like, like if you can execute, if you can get it done, then absolutely. And I think that's like really cool to see, and it's a cool culture as well, just to see like how encouraging they are of like others. So I think when it comes to speaking on podcasts and things like that, they've always been like very open with like everyone on the team participating and like saying their voice and like hearing their perspectives. And I think that's also cool because it was funny. A few years ago, I was thinking like, oh, what would be a cool podcast? And like right now, if you look at most podcasts, right, they're always interviewing like the founders and like kind of like the co-founder team. But like I think there's this like alpha that you can actually find by talking to like the team members, right? Like
Yeah.
what were you guys doing to like make this project successful? Because I think there's like a lot of things that like obviously the founders are focusing on, but then there's also like very specific things that team members are focusing on. And I feel like if you don't have the whole picture, then it's like hard to really get like exactly what the game plan was and things like that. So I do think there's this world where who knows, someone might start a podcast that like interviews non-founders, right? And sees like, okay, what the head of engineering, the head of BD, the head of strategy, like what goes on there. I think there's like so much cool things you can come from that. So yeah.
Yeah, it could be called like second in command or something like that. But that's like a great idea. I think that's like there's a niche there that someone might want to fill. Yeah. So like the token launched in December. It was a massive success. I think more successful than most people anticipated, and certainly we had anticipated. Candidly, before the token launch, we were having private conversations with folks, and saying that the kind of like the token would launch with a $3 to $5 billion FDV, and we thought we were being conservative there, and um, but it launched somewhere around 6. It I think topped off at 11 or 12, and now sitting comfortably somewhere around 8 billion. Now things can change right over the next year, and certainly there's a chance that we go into a bear market in the next couple months, or at least things go sideways for some time. Right? I think a lot of folks think that, including myself, think that we're going to hit kind of a mega top somewhere in about a year, and so there's a lot of time between now and then. But the total launch was very successful, and so what's the biggest coordination challenge there? And what are some of the things that surprised you about that process, having witnessed possibly, dozens of teams do this on the VC side?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this was actually, when I was actually thinking of jumping from like reciprocal ventures to movement, one of the things is I wanted to join a team that had not gone through a TGE, because I think that in itself is such a unique experience. And by the way, I forgot to mention earlier, but I am still a venture partner at Reciprocal, and so I think it's really cool that I get to keep relationship with Reciprocal and like share teams with them. But I think that just going back to like what I was saying, I do think like the TGE for us, part of it was like, okay, we can either think short term or we can think long term, right? And if we make the wrong decisions of like trying to play games or like trying to do what other people have done, right? Like there might be like some second order effects from making those short term decisions. And then that turns into like even mistakes like later on that we cannot fix, right? So from the beginning, like the team was very clear, like, okay, look, we are going to do our best job. But once our token launch happens, like price is something we are not going to try paying attention to, because we can always make like a lot of wrong decisions. What we're going to focusing on is executing, making sure that the community is there, making sure the ecosystem projects are there, making sure that everyone on the team is happy, and making sure that we're all kind of in sync. And I think because like we were just like so cohesive and like everyone understood, like it was funny, like a lot of times like we had some people like sharing like prices on like, oh, like this is what the things like, here's like the pre-market, right? And Rushi was very intentional, like, guys, like I don't want to see this because it's a distraction, right?
Yeah.
Our job is like we want to launch the best secure chain possible that's out there. We want to make sure that our community is successful. We want to make sure our ecosystem is successful. And if we're like too honed in on just like the price, then there's just going to be a lot of issues. Now, obviously, that's not the only thing that we focused on. Like, I think building up to TGE, one thing that our kind of head of strategy, who works with us, set up was these like daily syncs. Like every single day, the whole exec team was on a call running through like, okay, here's our timeline. Here's the steps we need to take. Here's what we need to accomplish, right? So every single day we met for an hour, maybe starting 3 weeks before TGE, just like marketing, BD, engineering, DevRel, like every head of every like team within movement, just to make sure we were like all in sync. And I think, even building up to TGE, I think communication is like the most important thing, right? Like you can't have things slip through, like, and not only you can't have things slip through, but usually throughout the year, most teams are working in silos. Like, okay, BD is doing its thing. Obviously marketing we're working very closely with, but they're also doing their own thing. Engineers are doing their own thing. DevRel is obviously doing their own thing. But I think when it came to TGE, like every single team had to be in lockstep with each other. So that was critical because so we weren't giving like mixed signals. We weren't saying like different things, right? We all just needed to make sure we were all on the same page. And I think, that was like a really cool experience because it felt kind of like, again, like the whole team is together. We're all working to make this successful. And by the way, I think similar to your expectation, that's what my expectation. I think my expectations were actually lower than what you had. But I think it was really cool just to see how motivated the community was, how interested the teams were. We had a lot of ecosystem projects just like talk about their experience working with us. And I think that goes a little bit under the radar because with some chains, like they initially have like their top builders, and then everyone else is kind of forgotten about. And we've made it like very intentional that we try working with everyone. We try giving them same level of support as we give across the board, and we just want everyone to be successful, right? And I think people do appreciate that, and it's obviously reflected in how excited the community is, how excited the ecosystem projects are working with us. But yeah, like there isn't like one thing I can say that got us there, but I do think, again, it was just like being in lockstep with each other, just the team being very cohesive, making sure communication was like, anything happened, anytime anything happened, that's the other thing is like, we also have this culture where it's like, it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to like things, but just communicate about it so we can fix it, right? It's not about who's to blame. It's just about how we can like work together to like address it as a team. So yeah, I mean, I think there's just we were very happy with the result. I do have a story about like the day of TGE. We actually since we were starting with like an Asia exchange, we had to work on Asia time zone. So a bunch of the team in SF drove to San Francisco. So I'm in San Jose, which is like almost like an hour away from SF. So and most of the team lives around the Bay, not in SF, but we all drove to the office. We got there around 1 a.m. in the morning, and none of us had a key. And the one person who had a key that was in the office fell asleep on the couch. And so we were all scrambling, like how to get in. We're like, oh my God, how are we going to get in? What's going to happen? And then thankfully, there was a night security guard who actually had a key card. And he saw a bunch of people lined up in like, 5 or 6 of us. And he's like, "Can I help you guys?" And then he was a very, very nice man. He let us in, and we obviously
Probably confused like all these young guys ever try to get in.
but there's kind of like one of the things where it was like an all-nighter. We were all there together. Very memorable of just like seeing like, making sure like everything is going. We were just like in a war room. I think I shared a picture on my Twitter about that. But yeah, it just felt like one of this like it's just like such a memorable event. Like if I could create like an NFT of that event, that would be a great memory to have because it's just so fun. It's just like all hands on deck. Everyone's like working together. That's a thing. Like sometimes when you're not like within a company or you're not working at a crypto startup, you kind of miss some of those things that happen. But that was a pretty fun milestone that I think all of us are going to remember the rest of our crypto careers.
So you said that one of the things that you thought was sort of interesting was that this team had never done a TGE before, right? And but yet the TGE went so well, and we're not going to talk about the TGE for the whole conversation here. I just want to like kind of get some of the backstory here, but I think I heard Rushi talking on like Empire about how token advisory firms are basically useless because what worked for one project, will definitely not work for another project. Like, how did you navigate sort of putting together the game plan that would be the right game plan for the movement TGE? And what are some of the kind of maybe surprising things there or things that people don't really think about that goes into a successful token launch that were, that are either like unique to movement or maybe, can be applied to other projects?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, so I think, sometimes we would get advice on like, hey, this is like the best course of action. And I think the cool thing, like I said, is we do have a very open culture at Movement. And so whenever there was like some kind of like big decision, especially with regards to like, okay, which exchanges do we list on? Like, what are you going to do? Things like that. Rushi would bring it to the team, that Tiger call that I mentioned that, we had daily syncs up and we'd discuss it as a team and make a decision and be like, okay, look, this is the advice we're getting, but if we as a team disagree, then we're not going to do it. Or, this is the advice we're getting. If we as a team agree to it, then we are going to do it. Right. So, um, I think there was like a lot of just like understanding the market dynamics. But I do think also there was a lot of like, you know, our base philosophy has always been kind of what I was going back to is like, how do we make sure that community and like ecosystem are successful? So whatever decision we make with TGE, it has to have that outcome. If we're making a decision that actually hurts community and ecosystem, then we're not going to make it, right? It was like very much whatever question we were getting is like, okay, in the end of the day, does this help us achieve our goal of like supporting like our community and supporting our ecosystem, or does it not? And most times when it was like against community and it would hurt community or hurt our ecosystem, we would say, no, we're not going to do that. Um, so I do think like, the cool thing about movement is that we do have people who have experience from other blockchains that have gone through TGE. So obviously we had expertise from that. We have people who are, degens have seen like what's going on with like certain token launches. So we had that. Obviously, one of my core things was also understanding like the competitive nature of like what's gone on with previous TGs, where have they failed, where have they succeeded, like coming up with that strategy of like, okay, here's what they've done well, here's what they've done bad, let's avoid what they did bad, let's do what they did good. And then we also had like, one of our core members, who helps us a lot on like the token side of things, giving us his spots, right? And so I think all of that together just like kind of helped us out really when it came to like how to do the TGE. But I will say at the last minute there were a lot of surprises, right? There was a lot of things we didn't know. I mean, as you probably know, like a lot of exchanges won't tell you till like the 11th hour whether they're going to list you or not, right? And that's tough. It's not easy. And all we could do is prepare. And I think that's really where we shined is like the whole team was prepared for like, hey, like whatever happens, we're going to be ready. Let's model out every single scenario. Let's see what happens. Yes, here, no here, things like that. But yeah, I can't say specifically to like, obviously the exact decisions that were made, but I can say like, the team was very much aligned. And I think the good thing is like, we were all together in this. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So what can people do with their tokens now, and what are people doing with their tokens right now? Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, the main thing that I think people can get ready can do as of today is actually our liquid staking vaults. So we have 3 partners that have the ability that you can like liquid stake your tokens. Right now, we also did like a commemorative NFT project that we launched for people who are staking tokens and like participating in our network. So I think that's gonna be great. But one of the things we wanted to do is like we obviously had a successful TGE, and we want to be like very intentional about how we're rolling out our network. And so, what we're starting with right now is really making sure we have like robust infrastructure in place and we'll get robust like security measures in place. And so we are like actively working with our infra providers, with our security providers. Obviously our audits have been completed. And so very soon we are actually going to launch our kind of like our next beta coming up. And that's when we are going to start onboarding like a lot of ecosystem projects. And so there will be things for teams to interact with like dApps, with different categories, whether it's DeFi, whether it's NFTs, whether it's memes. We have a bunch of teams that are already building this. They're ready to deploy. And so we're just working like very closely with them to make sure that they're ready and that our network is stable. Um, and, we probably do have one or two announcements coming up in the next week or so where I can't speak to it, but it will be very obvious what we're talking about. But there will be other additional things you'll be able to do with your tokens. But like I said, a lot of this goes back to this like short-term versus long-term thinking, right? Like short-term, if we're thinking, we're like, okay, we need to deploy everything as fast as we can. We need to make sure that the people are able to like, use their move tokens in X, Y, and Z. The problem with that is like if one thing goes wrong, then like our whole value proposition of movement or language being the most secure chain goes out the window, right? So we do want to be like very intentional, and this is the long game, right? So yes, there may be some like, oh, there's not much to do with our tokens now, but actually liquid staking is very much live right now, and there's like some cool things you can actually do with liquid staking that we haven't announced, but I can say we are keeping track of those who are liquid staking. But like part of it is like the long-term view is like we want to do everything correctly in order and be intentional about how we launch, because I think the long-term benefits definitely outweigh the short-term kind of costs.
And so people can liquid stake with Meridian.
And Thunderhead, I believe Movernance as well. Yeah, we
Okay.
are liquid staking partners. So yeah.
So folks can liquid stake their earning yield on their Move token. So I'm looking here at Meridian right now. It looks like you get something like 31% APR, which is pretty good. You're locked. You are locked, however, for some amount of time. Now these pools might be full, so like people should definitely do their own research before like liquid staking and making sure they understand the terms and the lockups, etc. But what I'm really interested in is like, what's the kind of next step on the roadmap here? So, this TGE and the launch of the token was very much focused on like launching the token, as you mentioned, making sure there's robust infrastructure. Now, this is a mainnet beta. So basically what's important to note is that the chain is not going to get reset. Whatever state exists now is going to continue to exist. So like liquid staked assets and all the history will remain. But it is not a full mainnet in the sense that you can't yet deploy.
Yep.
Or maybe you can, but like in some certain conditions. So what's kind of like coming up in the next months, and when is mainnet production mainnet?
Yeah, for sure. So, so the next phase of our beta is going to be, it's going to be coming up shortly. And this is where you will be able to, and you're correct, like right now you can't just deploy smart contracts. The next phase is you will be able to deploy smart contracts. And so we will have ecosystems begin to deploy their dApps. So that'll be very exciting to see. And we will have, basically, you will be able to interact with the dApps on our network. So, that's like the second phase where we're going to have a phased rollout of certain ecosystem projects. We do have like our movement network roadmap as well, right? And so phase one is more or less done. We're now like approaching phase two. So, part of phase two is launching the official movement network mainnet, which is going to come after this. Also working on things like our fast finality settlement, integrating move staking, and then kind of phase three, where we have even further down the line, is like working on our move stack to be able to let teams deploy their own rollups on top of movement, integrating the move EVM component that we've talked about, as well as like integrating shared sequencing. So there should be some really juicy updates coming up for that in the next few months. And then, we obviously have like our phase four of just like our multi-staking opportunities that exist within movement. So yeah, time wise, I can't give exact timelines when each of these are happening, but, we do have these like phases that we have scoped out, and, we are like going one by one and going through those. But I will say, shortly, I can't comment when, but there will be a pretty major update coming to our beta chain, and we will have dApps that are deploying on top of movement that you'll be able to interact with.
Okay, so currently it is a closed beta. So deploying smart contracts to the L2 is still permissioned to some extent. You can't yet launch your own Move rollup or your Move L2 using the Move stack. That'll come later, but I think that's one of the most interesting things about Movement is being able to launch your own Move-based blockchain, your own sovereign chain to some extent, and utilizing the Move stack to do that. Other things that are still in the works is the ability to launch EVM chains, or at least to deploy EVM contracts on the Move L2, which I'm actually quite excited about because I think it opens up the possibility for lots of pre-existing established EVM dApps to deploy on Movement. I'm trying to get like some of the folks that I know over at some big DeFi protocols to get connected with you guys. So maybe we could talk about that offline. And the shared sequencer and the fast finality that will also come later. Okay. So if people are interested in like getting to know everything about this infrastructure stack, they should definitely check out the white paper. It's on the website. It has everything in detail. All the infrastructure components are there. And we also have a blog post over at our Interop VC Twitter. So it's x.com/Interop VC. And we wrote a whole blog post there detailing those infrastructure components so people can get a better understanding of what that looks like. So looking at the ecosystem, there's lots of different people kind of building new things there, like on the kind of emergence side of things. And then on the community side, there's also IFTs and meme coins. And, I think for people listening to this and trying to figure out like, okay, what's the interesting stuff in Movement that I should be looking at? Maybe thinking about perhaps like, getting some tokens or getting involved in the community or maybe building. What are some of the kind of key projects that are building that people can get interested in?
Yeah. So on the so we have like obviously different categories. I think on the DeFi side, we have Echelon coming up. We have Meridian, obviously. Echelon's lending. Meridian, we have as like kind of liquidity provider in a DEX. We also have like UserSwap, which is going to be launching infrastructure for meme coins as well. We also had like our Battle of Olympus winners from last year. Podium is building like a social app layer on top of Movement. We have teams like Sentiment, which is actually building on-chain jewelry, which is a really cool idea. And then on the AI side, we have a bunch of teams also working on some like really cool AI solutions. So Axel is building AI agents on top of Movement. We have Random, which is also building DeFi for AI. So I know there's this new term of DeFi AI or DAI or whatever, which I don't know. I feel like it's not a new thing. I feel like this has existed. So he's been working on it, by the way, for like the past year. So yeah, I think those are all like really cool things. We also have like Up Network, launching their phone coming up. So we do have like a lot of cool categories that I think are coming up. Whether it's like in the AI space, sports and prediction markets, Bracket is there. Stadium.science is also launching something with us. Then there's like DeepIn, gaming, DeFi. So yeah, all those categories. So I would say, paying attention. We also are working currently on an AI hackathon. That should be really fun and exciting to see what the community comes up with. But I do want to take a second to talk about community because obviously these are like a lot of ecosystem projects, but I think we've, in general, just been like very blown away by community. I've seen just like how excited they are, how much support they're giving us. A few weeks ago, someone started 100 days of Move, just organically. They're like, I'm going to learn Move, and every single day I'm going to write about what I'm learning, what I'm focusing on. And it's become such we've like, now we're paying attention to that. And, I think it seeks stuff like that, it gives us ideas. And so, it's something that I think we love seeing the community come up with like these new campaigns, these new ideas, and we find ways to work with them and support them in these. And so, I hope to see more things like that, where it's like the community coming up with an idea and we can support the community and we can obviously help them get the traction and get some co-marketing done. But for the community to take initiative, it goes like a really long way. And again, it just speaks to like how involved our community is and how excited they are about movement. And I think that's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, the community is, I think, one of the most impressive things that I mean, kind of like not surprising, but unexpected things, right? How vibrant the community is, how diverse it is. Also, just the fact that like there are communities in very remote, emerging kind of places, right? Like in sub-Saharan Africa, in Southeast Asia. There's like I've seen things like guys over in Indonesia or Vietnam or India, and I think that it lends itself well to this theory that we have that a lot of the interest and developer interest that's going to come from in the next coming kind of months and years are going to be from emerging markets. You can see this in all the developer reports that uh, fastest growth is coming from emerging markets in terms of blockchain developer adoption. And frankly, like I think that Move is well positioned there. Move is a language that is fairly easy to use, secure, has a lot of benefits for like new developers coming into the space that maybe don't have like tens of thousands of dollars to pay for an audit to deploy a contract. And I think it just makes everything a lot safer for everyone if you have this high degree of certainty that projects are not like very don't have sort of blatant vulnerabilities, which was the case for EVM chains and EVM projects like kind of early on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, yeah, like all those countries you listed, like, including like Vietnam and Turkey. Oh my gosh, they're, like we have like, and the cool thing also is to see like, even within community, we have communities launching NFTs. We have the Gorillas, which is a community project. We have like these different categories of like teams that have identified themselves, and it's just really cool to see. I think that's one of the most rewarding things to see. Even I would say like, um, when it comes to just excitement about movement, it's like just seeing like how like the community is also starting to do their own events, right?
Yeah.
Like movement events. And I think a few weeks ago we had uh, a bunch of the community members in Istanbul do an event at the Istanbul University, right? Which, we never thought about. Like, it's just like, it's really cool just seeing that. And it helps us a lot. But it's just, it's fascinating, and I would love to see kind of more of this. But I would say that, shout out to the community for all the support that they've given us.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it really aligns so much with this culture that you were talking about earlier, right? Like wanting everyone to succeed. And when you're kind of following the movement Twitter, it definitely feels like that culture permeates through the community as well. It's like the movement account is retweeting, like Rushi's retweeting it, and Rushi's supporting it, and like there's this culture of just wanting everyone to succeed, no matter where they are, how small they are, how new they are to the ecosystem. It's just like it's like LFG all the way, right? Like it's super cool, and I think it's gonna just breed this culture of just having great people doing great things, and very very bullish on the culture. I think like the culture is one of the most underrated things about movement that is one of the biggest drivers to success here of this ecosystem. Um, so yeah, before we wrap up here, there was an announcement, or like there's been some rumblings. So I don't know if it was an announcement, but definitely some press around a potential fundraise announcement. What can you talk about here? What
No,
what is like public and what is still kind of speculation?
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, in general, like, obviously, I can't comment on rumors, but I can say that, our Series B is currently underway. And I think the main thing is, look, for us, it's like we're trying to, we continue just to see strong support across our partners, across our teams. And I think our focus, right, is like, how do we get our kind of robust infrastructure for DeFi launched? How do we support next generation builders? How do we expand like our EVM compatible ecosystem? How do we strengthen the capabilities of our Move language and like our vision for building what we set out to build, right? And then in the end of the day, how do we support builders, right? So um, I know like a lot of people like they see the headline and they get like super excited. For us, it's more like, look, this gives us more dry powder to support our ecosystem, to support our community, things like that. Um, but yeah, like I can't specifically comment on the rumors, but I can say that it's currently underway.
Right. And I mean, this capital would presumably help really invest in the ecosystem, invest in the technology, and build out this long term vision for Move, which I think is needed. Right. I mean, you need a foundation of capital that is able to fund fund that project for a decade, and that obviously there's like good treasury management practices and everything to kind of like keep those foundations afloat. But it is an expensive undertaking. I wonder if you could also maybe talk about, if we take a step back and look at Move more broadly. Obviously, like Sui's been doing really well. Aptos is also doing really well. Um, what do you think is the end game for Move, and what role does Move in particular have to play in this ecosystem of, like, right now we have kind of three major players in movement.
Yeah.
I think in Move, sorry, for people looking at this language, maybe not be obvious, like if there should be a winner, or if all three of these are successful, if we all win, like how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, I think one of the things is we want to see Move as a language succeed, right? And so however we can help that, we are going to. And so I do think Aptos, and ourselves, we have different views and different kind of categories that we're building the Move language in, but overall, holistically, it's helping Move grow as a language, right? And so I do think, yes, like in a certain sense, like we are competing, but at a certain sense we're not, because we are focusing on like very different things. Like I think that's where like one of the things that I think most people kind of forget is that Move is a relatively new language compared to like Solidity, compared to like the Rust components that have been built like with like Solana and Cosmos. And so if we start like competition and fighting too early, like we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot, right? I think
Yeah.
we aren't at a place where like Move has become like you know like all over, like everyone's using it and it's like a very common language. And so I think in the beginning we get as many users who are using the Move language that are comfortable with it, um, and we grow as many developers as possible, and that should be a goal of all of us together, right? Um, and it shouldn't matter, right? It shouldn't matter if you want to build on Street. It shouldn't matter if you want to build Aptos. It shouldn't matter if you want to build on Movement. But I think the end goal is like, how do we get as many Move developers as possible? And then yes, we can start going like, okay, now this is the category that this dev is building. They're building this flavor of Move, etc. But I do think in the beginning we aren't at that state where like we need to start splitting hairs and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great note to end on. I think, yeah, rising tides lifts all boats, and it definitely, resonates with the culture of movement. So, yeah, let's move. I'm gonna I'm gonna let you get back to your baby there. So it's like something going on back there. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on, and looking forward to chatting again soon.
Yeah, appreciate it. And obviously, thank you so much for Interop and their support. Great partners, and we've definitely learned a lot from you. And again, it's also one category I didn't shout out is like our investors that have been with us since day one and along the way for our success, because it's been super helpful.
Well, thank you. Cheers, Alec.